Hello, everyone. This is Yash, one of the co-founder and CPO at Surge.
Hi, I'm Michael, CEO at Surge.
So, in this video, we gonna cover a borrower playbook. So, when you are holding Bitcoin and you're looking to borrow against it, what are the stuff that you should be like aware of or watch out? Um, I've been borrowing against Bitcoin for a while. Michael, you been?
Longer than I'd like to share.
Okay, that's cool. And we've been building this protocol from last like at least like a year and two, like, with research and now in production and finishing our audits and now getting into the phase two of the journey. So we have gathered like so much insights. One, generally by building the protocol and talking to a lot of borrowers who get on the platform, from feedbacks and all the work we do. So in this video, we're gonna share that as a playbook. What you should like watch out for when you're actually borrowing against Bitcoin. Either you have done it before, sure. Like I think this will open up a lot more ideas for you to like watch out for the next time when you do it, or for those who've been holding for a long time but they're not confident because they hear all the scary stories on like BlockFi blowing up, a couple of years back. I have this friend who's still upset about it because he lost all his Bitcoin in the blow up, and they were offering borrowing as one of the key services in their product. So let's go one by one and kind of talk about them. The first thing that I want to highlight is custody, because a Bitcoin is a bearer asset. Whoever has the key has the coins, right? If it is not your keys, not your coin. It's very standard in Bitcoin if you're a Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin. So now when you're borrowing against it, custody becomes like a super important like piece. So Michael, why don't you share some insights around like what are the different custody options that are out there, and then how should a borrower should think about? Let's say our borrowers are being holding it for a very long time, and now they're looking to borrow now.
Yeah, totally. So custody is the number one most important thing when you are thinking about borrowing. So who has the custody? Who has control? Who can make the decisions when you enter into like a contract, either a legal contract or a programmatical contract for your Bitcoin getting borrowed and potentially lent out. So there's a couple different degrees of custody in Bitcoin borrowing. And the first, which was the earliest, was, hey, I'm just going to hand over my Bitcoin to a centralized authority. Maybe it's someone like Coinbase, or maybe it's someone like a Ledin or a Salt. Like these are some players that are out there today. Historically, there was also like a company like BlockFi. So when you hand over your keys, you know the mantra, not your keys, not your coins. So those institutions then have the ability to either rehypothecate or not, on their honor. Companies like Ledin, I think, offer services where some of their loans
you can choose
do rehypothecate and others don't, again, based on their trust. But in some instances, like a BlockFi, those companies did lend out the Bitcoin and they didn't come back. So when you engage in Bitcoin borrowing with a custodian, that is something to worry about, and that is something to think about to hand over your keys. Another dimension to the custody part is, do they take your Bitcoins, wrap it into some sort of synthetic, and then give you like an IOU? So this may be a way that loan aggregators, like DeFi protocols, sort of like take the Bitcoin, drop it into WBTC, CBTC, or who knows what else. In that instance, you actually give up your Bitcoin to some sort of entity. Maybe it's a custodian, a single custodian like Coinbase. Maybe it's sort of a multi-institutional custody like a BitGo. And there's even a sort of decentralized way you can do this with threshold Bitcoin, that's TBTC. But either way, you are giving up your coins to one of these entities, and then they give you back a synthetic, which then you have the control over. But that is what you're borrowing against. And if that peg between the bearer asset of Bitcoin and the synthetic token, which you have now received, is ever broken, that is where you can get into trouble there. And that has happened in the past. So that's definitely like a concern. Probably like the biggest concern I might have there also is generally, when you do that, all of the Bitcoins for that wrapped asset get pooled into one large fund. So that's to say, once you swap your Bitcoin for a WBTC, there's not a segregated UTXO for your Bitcoin. All of the WBTC Bitcoin get wrapped up together. And if there ever is like any issue with that, it's going to be hard to determine which Bitcoin are yours and which ones are going to get back to you. So there might be a haircut in that situation. And then another form of custody for Bitcoin borrowing is a multi-sig setup. And that's like where one institution may, you put your Bitcoin into a multi-sig address, and then many institutions have to sign off for it. And that is probably closer to closer, but not the exact same, is how we do it. That disperses the responsibility to multiple institutions, so it leaves less room for one failure. But it is slower because these are manual operations then that those custodians will have to take into account. But you do get access to your bearer asset, and in some instances, it is segregated as well. So there's some benefits there. And then maybe coming back to Surge, this is sort of like
decentralized,
the golden decentralized way to do it, where you keep access to your bearer asset of Bitcoin. There are multiple members of the distributed custody network that are verifying the rule set, but there are no manual operations. So you get the speed and efficiency of DeFi protocols. You get the reliability of multiple institutions, and you get the bearer asset, and you get the segregated Bitcoin. So if there's ever like an issue, you know which Bitcoin are yours, and everyone else knows which Bitcoin is there. So there's no pooling on the Bitcoin custody side. So those are the most of the categories of custody out there in Bitcoin borrowing, and of course, you know our preference, the Surge way,
our
segregated DCN Bitcoin.
So just to summarize what you run through, so one is a very custodied model where you are handing over your Bitcoin to a custodian like Coinbase or Ledin, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have the more of a DeFi version, which is a little bit easy on KYC, and you can get better rates. That's what I think, like on Aave and Morpho. But the catch is still it's custodian. Like you are either with BitGo.
It's kind of a trick.
It's a trick. It's a trick.
You have non-custodial access to your synthetic token.
Yes, right. Either it's BitGo or Coinbase or Binance or TBDC is a decentralized version of it. So another catch with that model is also it's not just lending. While lending is a dominant use case, but it also tried to do other stuff, but it has not been successful. But it's fairly, and I also see it as a way for other ecosystem to adopt Bitcoin because they can't have Bitcoin. So what do? They bring Bitcoin on board through WBTC or CBDC. That's been the major use case, but unfortunately, it's not worked out as it was planned, and now it's more like lending. It's where majority of those coins are. And the third thing is this multi-sig setup, where it's again like you can verify, you can look into your Bitcoin because it's been multi-sig with let's say a lender, another institution who's signing off all this. But the catch is it's manual. There's a intermediary, there's a human in the loop problem, which is something I think DCN as a concept, as a construct from Surge is going to eliminate that by decentralizing all that and programmatically without a human in the loop, we are able to like achieve that. So custody is something a core of this thing, and if you are really, I think it is fair to be like that because Bitcoin is a bear asset. You need to like always see where your coins are, at least on chain. Whether you have access or not access, I think it's very important not to be pooled, not to be in somebody else's control versus you have or relying on some proof of reserves, some report that comes every month or quarterly. Instead, take a look at it
right now,
whenever you want, right now, 24/7. So, and that's the ethos that we also reflecting through product that we are working on with Search. So yeah, that's about custody. What's the next topic? Like the next important one, a borrower should be looking or watching out for is the
rates and fees iceberg.
Yes,
is that how you described it?
Yes, the rates and fees iceberg. That's correct. That's correct.
Cool. Yeah. So, when you go out and you take a loan or a line of credit for your Bitcoin, there's multiple types of fees that you can be assessed with. And like in a traditional fixed term, fixed interest loan, you're going to get, 10% of an interest rate. There'll be 2 points up front. You may have prepayment penalties or not be allowed to prepay. And there might be maintenance fees if you are allowed to roll this over from year to year. So maybe 10% is your headliner, but then there's 2% on top. Then there's another 2% in prepayment fees. So this can really, really stack up to be a very expensive loan. So where we come in, where we're significantly different, is that we're offering a line of credit, and that line of credit just has one rate. Right now we have a variable product that's a variable rate, and then we have a separate fixed rate product that are both perpetual that you roll over from 1 year to the next year. But there's no hidden fees, no origination fees, there's no maintenance fees, and there's no prepayment fees. You borrow when you want, you prepay you pay back when you want, because there's no concept of prepaying, and it's all transparent to both the lender and the borrower.
Yeah, so I like to share the screen, which is the rates iceberg.
That rates iceberg.
Right. So while the hero rate is like, okay, it's 8%. That's been been a little bit of average nowadays, but the problem is it doesn't say the rest of the fees. Right? So like Michael said, there's origination fee, and then there is a repayment fees. Like every time you repay, every time you do a draw, like there is a fee for it, and there is a fee to like keep it there with your lender. Like let's say it's 6 months, a year, whatever it is. There's some sort of they're calling it a holding fee, a management fee, and then there is other like real costs, right? So if you technically had all that up, like it goes up to easily 14%. Generally, the average has been at 12%, and it goes up to like 18, 19, 20. I've even seen like 25%. If it is no KYC and on the DeFi side where like multi-sigs and stuff, the catch being like, oh, okay, is it KYC or not KYC? If they KYC this, they also do a credit check on you. So that kind of brings down the rate a little bit. But if you're a Bitcoiner and what's the point? Like if you're KYC at the end of the day, then that's one of the core ethos of being Bitcoiner. And it goes up to like whether you're comfortable or not comfortable. But I think overall, it's not what they say. That's the catch. It's not the one hero rate. It can go up to, that you will only know when you take out the loan. Or that's another reason why, it feels like, oh, borrow on Bitcoin, don't sell Bitcoin is such a core part of being Bitcoiner, but it is not caught up as expected. Everybody feels like there's a huge market, but none of the players are able to like really pull it off. So that's part of a broader problem.
So when you're watching out for what to look for when you're buying Bitcoin, Look for the
rates
hidden
and fees.
fees.
Yes.
Watch out for the hidden fees.
Yes. Yes. So let's move on to the next one. The next one was the LTV and liquidation. I think liquidation is something like everybody's scared of. Like, it's generally when you speak to borrowers, they're like, oh, you're going to take my coins. Like, you guys are evil. Like, you guys going to like just liquidate my position.
Yeah.
And I'm on a vacation. I'm just having a good nap, or I'm, just sleeping, and just gets up and like check my position is like liquidated. And this is actually a scary part of, one of the scary part of taking out a loan or a credit against your Bitcoin.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is when talking to Bitcoiners, getting liquidated is the scariest thing of borrowing against your Bitcoin. So it's really important to make sure you understand what the maximum LTV rate you can take for your loan or line of credit is, and what are the liquidation terms. Because, ideally, the whole point of going into this is so that you don't have to give up your Bitcoin, don't have to sell it, and get to utilize the USDC that you can borrow, or USD that you can borrow against it. So you keep growing your stack. So typically in CeFi world, the LTV that people will let you borrow against your Bitcoin is ranged between 30%, 50%, and 70%. In the DeFi world, you can kind of get up to 80%, which is very, very risky and would not recommend. But the sort of interest rate cost is correlated with your LTV. So a lot of companies like Strike or Ledin or Salt will have different prices based on your initial LTV. So if you're only going in at 30% LTV, then your interest rate is going to be lower than if you borrowed up to 70%. With Surge, we are kind of right in the middle, where we allow people to borrow up to 50% of the Bitcoin that they deposit. And we think that's a good amount, but in a drawdown, you may need to top up your collateral. And that's just kind of the cost of doing business in Bitcoin at this time. But understanding what your liquidation is kind of the other half of that. So there's a couple fancy products out there that you can look into that'll say, hey, we offer a no liquidation option. And, a no liquidation option means you're just paying for it in another way.
Yeah.
So as far as I can tell, with the two options that I've seen out there that have no liquidation options, the interest rate is almost double what it would be otherwise. So ignoring the mechanics of what goes on behind the scene, you're basically paying a higher premium so that you don't get liquidated. And for some people, maybe that's the right option. There's also a concept of partial liquidation and full liquidations. So some what we offer is a full liquidation system that doesn't do a liquidation until 90% LTV, which is very high, and probably near the highest in the market. And then there's partial liquidation. So some teams will do partial liquidations at 80%.
80% is being standard.
Yeah, that's pretty standard. And what they'll do there is take you from 80% LTV down to, say, 65% LTV. And really what they're doing behind the scene is they'll liquidate about a third of the Bitcoin, sell that, and then it improves the health of the loan. So it's not just liquidating 10%. It's actually pretty significant.
Yeah.
So you really have to be aware of what that number is and what are the terms on that, because you may think it's just a small amount, but it's actually quite substantial. 30% is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it? Yeah, go for it.
So as liquidation itself sounds scary, but there are so much nuances to it. So higher the liquidation price, it's always better. Or liquidation LTV. So right now it's 90%, which we think is pretty fair for for those who are borrowing against Bitcoin. And I think the standard has been at like 80%.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's partial liquidation, which kind of brings it down to like 50%. But the catch is like, well, the liquidation LTV is at 80%. So there's also a margin calls, right? It's been pretty popular. So people are really annoyed with like margin calls. I keep getting margin calls, right? So that's a pain for borrowers in general. Like I said, some are offering a no liquidation, but there's a premium that you pay at the end of the day. So it's nothing unique about it, actually. It's just I feel kind of addressing that fear of liquidation by saying, hey, we don't liquidate at the end of the day, but you are paying the price in a different way. That's been the problem with the whole Bitcoin borrowing landscapes, that competitors landscape, is that they're all trying to address in a different way. But when you actually go through it, you know it. So that's the problem. And now it's actually pushes a lot of this new I would say Bitcoiners who have not borrowed so far, but happy to borrow. But if it's but it kind of this kind of stuff scares them away. That's generally what I think. So these are like top 3 things to look out for. One is the custody. The second is the rates and what are the fees that are associated with borrowing against Bitcoin. And the third thing is the liquidation and LTV. It's always good to like do a 50% collateral ratio, which is LTV, and then be very clear about when is my liquidation, what LTV or what price. Or the next thing is like, is there a margin call? Is this a partial liquidation? Is it like full liquidation? What is the transparency of that liquidation? How can I verify they actually liquidated at this price? It could happen like, your LTV almost hit 89.9%, but you need 90%. And how do you verify that? So I think these are some nuances that you should watch out for. Again, this is not a financial advice, or we are not giving any financial inputs. It's just that from our learning, what we've been learning, our observation with our own users is what this all about. Like you can take it as more of a playbook of when you're borrowing against your Bitcoin. So we also put up an article on our blog. I'll just quickly run you guys through that. You can find it under our blog. So there's a section called Borrow with Bitcoin, which we are trying to capture all these learnings, all these insights that we are discovering as we go through building the product. So there are 3 things: custody, rates and fees, and the liquidation and LTV. And also subscribe to our newsletter, where Michael or I will be like sharing some of these insights frequently. But yeah, so this is a quick run through of some of the things that you should watch out for when you are actually borrowing against Bitcoin. I hope this is useful. Stay tuned for similar content. Like and subscribe. Thank you.